Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jordan and thank you so much for clicking on one of my bookish videos. Today I am so excited to be filming my July wrap up and August TBR video. This is honestly my favorite video to film every month. Since it is officially August 1st, I figured I would go through each of the 18 books I read in July and talk about some of the books on my August TBR. So if you are interested in seeing my July wrap up and August TBR, then keep on watching. Okay, so in July, I read 18 books total, including 2 audiobooks, and I am in the middle of an audiobook right now, but I'm not going to count it. I'll just count that in my August wrap up. And all in all, it was a really great month. I was at the beach this month for vacation, so I read a lot of books last week. And honestly, I found some really great books this month. I'm super excited for August. I feel like we're getting into the fantasy season, which I am so excited for. And yeah, let's get straight into the books I read in July. So I started off July with a very special reread of We'll Always Have Summer by Jenny Han. I have read the series so many times now and it hits every single time. I wanted to do a reread before the 3rd season came out and I absolutely annotated this book so much, and it's just been so fun to compare the show to the book and like notice each of the book scenes be in the show. I had the best time rereading it. This is like a 5-star series for me. It's just so nostalgic and I love Conrad forever. Okay, next I read Truly Madly Deeply by Alexandria Bellafleur. This was gifted to me by Avon Books, so thank you very much to them. This is a romance book where basically the 2 main characters meet on a podcast about romance and they get off on the wrong foot. Colin is a divorce lawyer and he has a very specific view about love and marriage, and Truly is someone who had a very rose tinted view on love from her parents, but at the beginning of this book she learns something about her parents and she's in a very weird state in her life. I absolutely loved this book so much. I read it in a day. The bisexual representation from both of the main characters was so well done. I loved honestly everything about it. If you want a queer romance, I highly recommend this one. I gave it 4.5 stars. Next, I read a fantasy book, Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is a fantasy novel that is in a series. It is set in a fantasy world inspired by the pre-Columbian Americas and the different indigenous populations, the different mythology and religion of these indigenous populations. I really enjoyed this book. It honestly felt like such a breath of fresh air in the fantasy genre in the way that the magical world was so unique. I loved that it was not set in a Western society. I honestly really enjoyed the different myths and religious stories that were woven into this book and the plot. I gave this first book 4 or 4.5 stars, and I definitely am planning to continue reading the rest of the series soon. Next, I listened to the audiobook of Ordinary Love by Marie Rutkowski. I loved this book, okay? It is a queer romance, but it is so much more than that in that it is a character study about Emily and Jen who meet when they are growing up. They're in high school. They fall in love. It is Emily's first queer relationship and kind of her queer awakening. They break up and have a really bad falling out when they both go to college and move away from each other. And this book is kind of dual timelines, but it's mainly following Emily in the future as she is dealing with getting out of an abusive relationship with her husband and being in the middle of a divorce when she meets Jen again for the first time in like over a decade. The relationship that kind of ensues from that point between the two of them. The audiobook was so beautiful, and I just do not have enough good words for this book. I was so moved while reading it. The depth and strength of the female main characters in this book and the love between them was so beautiful, and I gave it 5 stars. Okay, next I read an early copy of A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping by the author of A Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, and the book is out now, so I highly recommend going to check it out if you are looking for a cozy romantasy. I really enjoyed this one. It gave me very similar vibes to A Very Secret Society, and my favorite thing about both of the books is just how cozy the atmosphere and the fantasy setting is. A Witch's Guide follows Sarah, who is the main character, and she is a witch who was exiled from her magical guild at a young age because she tried to resurrect her great aunt, and she then goes to open up a magical inn which basically takes in people and lures people in who need a second home or a place to kind of hide from the world and their problems. And as always, there was a very amazing found family between Sarah and the different people staying at the inn. There was a wonderful romance between Sarah and this other witch of sorts who comes to stay with her, and there was amazing representation of all sorts. So I gave this 4.5 stars. Okay, sorry, I had to take a little abrupt change of scenery because the sun is setting right now and it was so bright. Next, I read Only for the Week by Natasha Bishop, and this is a romance book following Janelle, who is on a trip for her sister's wedding. I think it's the bachelorette party leading into the wedding. You find out at the beginning of the book that her sister is getting married to her ex, and Janelle is not really upset about that, but her sister has been acting very weird since they started the relationship. So Janelle ends up being with the boys' side of the wedding party, and she is hanging out a lot with Rome, who is someone who is very cool, calm, collected, and they start to basically hook up for Janelle to have some fun for the first week before the wedding starts. I really enjoyed it. It was definitely a very spicy book. Maybe a little bit too much for me just personally, but I really did love the dynamic between Janelle and Rome. I feel like Rome really saw Janelle and supported her, and I did really enjoy the conflict between the two sisters too, based on the past relationship with the groom. I thought that was really realistic, so I gave this 4 stars. Now we are at one of my favorite books of the month, which I honestly did not expect, and that is Spark of the Everflame by Penn Cole. This book was gifted to me by Atria Books, so thank you very much to them. Okay, here's what I'm going to say. I have heard a lot about this book, and from a lot of my close friends, they did not really enjoy this book, and so I was never really inclined to pick it up. I feel like, especially with it being a very viral TikTok book, I am kind of picky about my fantasy and romantasy. However, I was sent this book, and I have been in a romantasy slump for the past few months, and I just needed something that I was going to become completely obsessed with, and this book and series has done that for me. I loved this. This is following Diem. She is, in this book, a mortal in a world where the descended are basically in power. They're descended from the gods, and Diem in this book is dealing with her mother being missing, and she is becoming a healer to the king who is sick in the castle, and she has to go to the descended's kingdom, where she starts to interact with Luther, who is Prince Luther and expected to become next in line to the crown. Throughout this book, Diem is dealing with a lot of conflict in her personal life and her love life, and she is also getting these really weird signs kind of hinting that she's maybe something more than just mortal. The romance in this book and the tension between between Diem and Luther is so good, and let me tell you, it continues into the second book. I just loved it so much. I gave this one a 4.5 stars, and it just made me want to read the rest of the series immediately. Okay, next I read an early copy of Well Actually by Maisie Eddings, which was gifted to me by St. Martin's Press, so thank you to them. This book releases on August 5th, so I don't yet have a physical copy, but trust me, I am going to get it right away on Tuesday when it released. I loved this romance book so much. I have read Maisie's other books, and they are just so good at not only writing queer characters, but just very compelling and realistic female main characters. Personally, I think this book follows Ava and Riley, and they meet when Eva, who is like an internet personality, posts a clip online while she's drunk, basically raving about Riley, who she dated for a little period of time in college, about how he was like the worst first boyfriend ever. Riley, who also has his own podcast and is pretty famous online, his fans see it, the clip goes viral, and the two of them are basically forced to do like a podcast together to try and take advantage of the spotlight on them. And I just loved that this book turned from enemies to lovers so well. You could tell that both of them had so many regrets about how their relationship went in the past, because they did really have a connection and a friendship, but they were both very immature for different reasons in college. I really loved the queer representation, and also just the way that Riley's character development was handled. He really focused on improving himself and making amends and changing the way that he handles people and different issues, which I really loved. And I gave it 4.5 stars. I really love this one. Okay, now we are at the very fun part of July where I went on vacation and I read as many books as I can and saved some very special ones for this week. I did just film a reading vlog where I have more thoughts in depth as I went along reading these books. So I'll link it here if you're interested in seeing any of my thoughts for these next 5 books. I started the week off by doing a reread of One Golden Summer, which I have talked about and reviewed on this channel many times so far this year, so I'm not going to go too in depth. This is my favorite romance book of the summer, and honestly, one of my favorite romance books of all time. I listened to the audiobook the first time and I physically reread this last week, and let me tell you, it hit just as good, if not harder, the second time around. I love this book. I love Charlie Florek so much. He is my ideal book boyfriend, and I just love the friendship between him and Alice and just the connection and bond that they form in this book. This is a book where Alice goes to the lake, to Barry's Bay, for the summer, and she meets Charlie, and they just have so much fun together. They really bring out the best in each other, even when they're both going through some difficult challenges in their life. And it is emotional, it is beautiful, and this is a 6-star book for me. Okay, and then I read one of my most anticipated books of the year, and that was Girl Dinner by Avi Blake. This arc was gifted to me by Tor Books, so thank you very much to my favorite people there. This is a crazy book. There is no other way to go about it, but I will honestly say this is one of the most unique books I've ever read and one of the best books I've ever read. It is a satirical horror type book. It is essentially supposed to be a dialogue about a very specific type of feminism and woman, specifically white, cisgender, wealthy, educated, able woman. The opportunities that are opened up for them versus other different groups. It is following Nina, who is a new sorority member in the house, which is like the most coveted sorority group on this university campus. And then Salone, who is a new mother going back to her job as a professor at the university, who becomes the advisor for the sorority. This book does include cannibalism, which is crazy to say, but the way that it is incorporated is so fascinating, and I gave this 5 stars. It comes out in October, and I highly, highly recommend checking it out. Next, I read another early copy of a very anticipated book, and that was Soularching by Lila Sage. This is her newest book, and in a new series. It's set in a small town called Sweetwater Peaks, and it is technically a paranormal romance series. It is following Collins and Brady. So Collins is going back to Sweetwater Peak, which is the town she grew up in. She kind of has a lot of very mixed feelings about her hometown, and Collins and her twin sister are able to see and communicate with ghosts. But since she went through a breakup and some issues with her career, she's been dealing with an issue where she cannot see or talk to the ghosts. So she goes back to her hometown in hopes that she can fix this problem, and she meets Brady, who is new to town, an upholsterer. He is running his own business, and the two of them are living together for the summer, and I absolutely loved it. Lila Sage makes the most wonderful small town romances. The way that she weaves up this cozy setting, I loved the extra aspect of the paranormal part to it, and I really loved Brady's character and how sweet he was to Collins. So I gave this a 4.5 stars. Then I read another highly anticipated book for me, and that was Coldwire by Chloe Gong. I was gifted an early copy of this book by Simon Teen, and I am so grateful to them. I love Chloe Gong's books, especially her young adult fantasy books, and this is a new genre for her. It's young adult dystopian. I absolutely loved it. I had the best time reading it. I thought that the concept was so interesting. It is basically set in this world where, to escape the effects of like climate change, these people have created an upcountry where most of society lives, where they basically live in a virtual reality like system. And then the very poor and those who can't afford the virtual reality system live in the down country. And within the upcountry and the down country, there are these different nations who have been in a cold war for quite some time. And this book is told from 2 different characters' point of view, Leah and Ariel. They both work for Nile Corp, which is one of the biggest like private corporations with a lot of power, but they work for Nile Corp in the upcountry and then the down country. And in this book, they are both set on missions where they are trying to work out whether this AI system has progressed to the point of being sentient. I thought that the dystopian commentary that you would expect was really well done. I loved the different plot twists and how the characters in this book mesh together. There was also a really wonderful romance, and it left off on a huge cliffhanger that I cannot wait to read more about in book 2. So I gave this a 4.5 stars. Then to wrap up my beach week, I did one additional reread, and that was my reread of Beachread by Emily Henry, which confirmed that this remains my favorite Emily Henry book. I have reread this book many years at the beach after reading it at the beach for the first time, and it just hits different there. I love this story so much. I love January and Gus so much, and I just think that Emily Henry's writing in this book specifically is just so impressive. I literally annotated so many extra lines on top of my current annotations, and I think that if you haven't read Emily Henry, this is a really great way to go in. It is so emotional with January's background of just losing her father and learning some really crazy secrets about his life. Same with Gus. Gus Gus has lived a pretty terrible life in his past, and just the friendship and the enemies and the background between January and Gus is so good. So this is an Infinity Stars book for me. Okay, and then the two final books that I read in July, I got to read an early copy of The Theory of Dreaming by Ava Reed, and then obviously I went and picked up a physical copy of this beautiful book. I love Ava Reed's writing so much, and this was the highly anticipated sequel to A Study in Drowning, which I really enjoyed. And let me tell you, I honestly loved A Theory of Dreaming so much more. I thought that they took the topics of A Study in Drowning and just took it to a next level in this book, and I really enjoyed following Preston's point of view and getting a lot more of his background in this book as well. This is basically following Effie and Preston in the aftermath of what happened to them when they were dealing with the Fairy King. This is when they go back to university and the two of them are forced to play the character of being students again and having to deal with the repercussions of their actions in the first book. I cried multiple times reading this. I felt so seen by Effie's mental health journey and the different challenges she goes through in this book. She is clearly dealing with a lot of depression and suicidal thoughts and just feeling so overwhelmed by the attention on her and all of the negative voices coming against her and in her head. And I thought Ava wrote her character and her mental health journey so well. And I loved the themes of nationalism and propaganda in this book, especially with Preston's character and what his country was going through. The themes were so reflective of what is going on in the United States and especially so many different countries right now. I just thought the writing was absolutely beautiful. I gave this 4.5 stars and I love Ava Reed. Okay, finally, I literally just finished on the last day of July, Glow of the Everflame by Pencil. This is the second book in the Kindred Curses series, and this book was also gifted to me by Atria Books, so thank you so much to them. I loved this book. Dare I say I loved it more than Spark of the Everflame. Again, heard really mixed thoughts about this second one, and I absolutely ate it up. I really enjoyed Diem's character. I think that she's a more complex female main character, and she may seem to have negative qualities, but I think in this book especially, you can tell that she has been through so much trauma, especially with losing her family members and then basically being ripped out of the life she knows and being placed into a world of the descended. So I thought the politics part was really interesting in this book and getting to see Diem in a new role. And then again, the romance between Diem and Luther was crazy. I felt heartburn in my chest because of the tension between the two of them and not knowing how they were going to fix things and try to be together. I absolutely love this. I gave it 5 stars and I cannot wait to read the next book. All right, so those are all of the books that I read in July. It was honestly such a good reading month. I feel like I'm slowly making my way back into the fantasy and romantasy genre, and I've just been so more eager to pick up romantasy books after reading and loving Spark of the Everflames, which is a good sign. So now let's talk about the priority books on my August TBR. I definitely have quite a few arcs that I want to read and new releases, but I've also been trying to make space to mix things up and mood read a little bit if I feel like it, because I definitely have been in a mood reading mood in the past few months. So let's go through them all. First, I am planning to read Immortal Consequences by I.V. Marie. So my friend Catherine has been raving about this book for months, and I definitely was planning on picking it up when it released, and then it clearly has been a big hit so far, which is really amazing, especially for a debut author. So I went out out and I got this right away. It is absolutely beautiful. This is another dark academia YA fantasy book, and I've just heard really, really good things. I'm actually going to a book event next Friday where I'm going to get to meet this author and hear her talk about it, so I definitely am planning to read it before then. Next, I was planning to read my e-arc of this book, and then out of the blue, while I was on vacation, a physical copy showed up, and I literally screamed and knew that I need to read this right away. That is Good Spirits by BK Borison. This was gifted to me by Avon Books, so thank you so much to them. I love BK Borison's books so much. She is the author of the Love Light Farm series and the Heartstring series, and this is her new small town paranormal romance series, and I am literally so excited. I am obsessed with the cover. My understanding is this is like a paranormal romance combined with a holiday romance, and it may be a little bit too early to read a Christmas type romance in August, but I do not care because I have heard really, really great things about this series so far, and BK has yet to disappoint me. Two more romance books that I will also be reading this month, which were also gifted to me by Avon Books, which apparently seems to be the theme, so thank you, Avon. The Build a Boyfriend Project by Mason Deaver, and then Cover Story by Mari McFarlane, which I'm super excited about. So the Build a Boyfriend Project is a queer romance. It features a transgender male main character, and it is this author's adult romance debut following a journalist in a dead-end job who agrees to teach his disastrous blind date how to be a better boyfriend. I am really excited about this one. I've never read this author's books before, but I've heard really great things. And then I am so excited to be reading Mari McFarlane's new book. I read one of her books before and really, really enjoyed it, and I know that Haley fam absolutely loves her books. It's marketed as Mr. and Miss Smith meets The Hating Game in this heartfelt, witty, and unput-downable enemies to lovers romance from international bestseller Mari McFarlane about two journalists who must fake a relationship in order to land a huge story. I'm really excited to read this one. Then I'm going to be reading my early copy of Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. Rebecca Ross is the author of the Divine Rivals series, which I absolutely loved, and Wild Reverence is her new first book in her new duology coming out. It's set in the same world of Divine Rivals, but I believe it's following one of the goddesses and then her epic love story with Immortal. I am so excited. I love the way that Rebecca Ross writes her books and her romantasy books, and I'm very interested to see the perspective of a goddess and her love story with Immortal. A few final books that I want to read in August include Our Vicious Oaths by N.E. Davenport. This was gifted to me by Harper Voyager, so thank you very much to them. This is N.E. Davenport's new book. It is marketed as a new world of romantic fantasy from award-winning author N.E. Davenport, a journey of powerful magic, enemies to lovers romance, and political intrigue as a warrior princess and vengeful king from rival Fae courts form a fierce alliance to take down a merciless despot. I have heard such good things about this book, and I was so lucky to get my hands on an early copy, and I just feel like this is going to be the romantasy that I need going into the fall, and I'm so excited to read it. Okay, and then I also am going to be picking up very, very soon, because this comes out August 5th, House of the Beast by Michelle Wong. This was also gifted to me by Harper Voyager, so thank you very much to them. This is a new dark gothic type romantasy book, I believe, which is marketed as a tale of strange gods, cosmic horrors, and ruinous revenge. House of the Beast has compelling characters and masterful world building. I just feel like the art alone, which the author, by the way, did herself, and this being a debut novel for the author, I am so excited to read. I have really, really high hopes for this one, and it comes out on August 5th, so definitely check it out. So that is it for this July wrap up and August TBR video. Hopefully you found something that sounds interesting of the books that I read in July, or maybe something that you want to read as well coming up in the next few months. I honestly had a great reading month. I feel like I'm getting ready for the fall and for fantasy and romantasy because that is my favorite time of year to read those genres. And I had a great vacation and just read so many great books on vacation, including so many early copies of books that I am just so excited to release. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching as always. And if you want to see more bookish videos from me, I would love it if you subscribe and stick around for more. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye.